You don't have to answer the question. I'm learning to thrive in the gig economy. Would you like to learn too? I'm coming to you from New Jersey, where it's snowing for the second day in a row. We're getting a little tired of it, but I can't do anything about it other than shovel when it stops. A small part of my business that I don't talk about a whole lot is consulting with my clients about how to talk to the media. I'd like to actually expand this because I think it's a good and lucrative part of the business, but I don't really have the clients yet for it. But I did deal with one this week, and I wanted to share with you the main advice that I gave her, that basically I give to all of my clients. It's a piece of advice that when I was a reporter I wouldn't have been too happy about. But I'm on the other side, so now it's time to be on the other side. And that is, you don't have to answer the question. In this case, my client got maybe 20 questions ahead of time. They said, we're going to talk about these areas. And I talked to her about it, and I said, well, there's a bunch of different areas in these that the reporter sent over to you. What do you want to get out of this interview? What do you want? And she explained it to me. I said, okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to focus on just those questions, that part of the interview. And you know what? If the reporter asks about something else, you just say, nah, that's fine. We can talk about that later. But really, I want to talk about this. Because you want to be in control of the interview, and you want the interview, when it finally comes out in publication, to be about the topic that you want. Now, the other thing is, as I explained to my client, if they ever ask you a question and you don't actually know the answer, it's perfectly fine to say, yeah, that's not really my expertise. That's not really something I deal with. I don't feel comfortable talking about that. Let's move on. All right? The other thing you can always do is you can always say something like, that's not very interesting. Let's just focus on, here's something that I think your readers will really enjoy. And do it that way. And maybe they'll come back to the question later, maybe they won't. Because a lot of times these reporters, they're just looking for an interesting story. They're looking for some interesting information. As long as you're providing that, they're going to be happy. Especially if they send you 20 questions. They don't really expect 20 in-depth answers, And if you're on a radio spot, well, they only have a certain amount of time. So they don't want to waste time going back and forth with you on a question that you're not interested in dealing with, or that you say you don't really know a whole lot. They want to entertain their listeners. So if they ask you a question and you go, I don't really know much about that. Let me tell you what happened about this, though. The radio guy is going to be perfectly fine with that because he just wants to entertain his listeners. Now, the one caveat is that, of course, if you're in the middle of a news story and they're calling you about something that might be, legal, or there might be something dangerous going on or something with your company, it's better just to say no comment and refer to the lawyers. Let's be clear about that. But generally speaking, my clients aren't in that situation. My clients are basically talking to trade publications and people like that. And, a trade publication's not out to get you. So you just got to say, I don't want to answer that question. Let's move on to something more interesting. And more likely than not, the trade reporter is not going to get upset with you. Anyway, there's a lot of other things that I usually share with my clients when I'm talking to them about how to prep for an interview. But I thought this week I'd at least share one piece of advice with you, and that is, you don't have to answer the question. If you agree, hit the like button. Please put some comments down below if you have some questions or if you have some advice for anybody who's going to do an interview. And I'll see you next week.